Today I'm going to have a look at a poem called Song for Last Year's Wife by Patten. This poem is about a man who is marking the anniversary of his divorce or his separation with his ex-wife. It's a dramatic monologue, which means that it's entirely from the perspective of the speaker or the persona, and it's written in open form. There's no rhyme or rhythm throughout the poem, which means that there's no real sense of order. There's this sense that the speaker can't structure his thoughts into a logical pattern, and that reflects his distress. There's also repeated use of caesura and enjambment, as well as longer and shorter lines throughout the poem, and that gives a changeable pace and rhythm. We'll have a closer look at some of those examples as we look through the poem. The speaker is also obviously alone in the poem, but he addresses his ex-wife throughout, and that gives a sense of pathos and also a bitter tone. So let's look at the title first of all. The word song would initially suggest a celebration or a jovial tone, but the mood is actually very sombre, and we get that sense immediately as we continue to read the title, where we have this phrase, last year's wife. So that could suggest either that she's died or that they've divorced. We won't know this until we start reading the poem itself. The word wife suggests that he is mourning the relationship, certainly. That phrase, last year's wife, also gives a slightly detached sense. So rather than saying song for my wife or my ex-wife, there's this idea that the speaker wants to distance himself from her or from the memory of her. The poem opens with the name of the ex-wife, Alice, and that direct address places emphasis on her name. So, like I said before, the speaker is clearly addressing her, but she's not present. And the use of personal pronouns throughout the poem emphasise that as well. So he says you all the way through, but we certainly get this idea that she's not actually there, which increases the pathos. The poem is set during winter. We have lots of winter imagery all the way through, which gives this sense of coldness and loneliness. On these next couple of lines, we've got an interesting use of enjambment. Here where it says, of knowing that you, dressed in familiar clothes, are elsewhere. The way that the stress falls on the second word of those two lines places emphasis on the words you and elsewhere, again reflecting the idea that she is not there anymore. And we've got these caesura here, which reflect the separation in their relationship. He imagines her dressed in familiar clothes, which gives us the idea that the speaker is still aware of her presence even though she's not there. And again, increasing the sad tone, he says perhaps not even conscious of our anniversary, so he feels that she's forgotten him. The word anniversary would normally be used to refer to a wedding anniversary, but here it seems that he's using it to refer to the moment of their separation or their divorce, which again increases the pathos. He then uses this short clause, but broken up through the enjambment, have you noticed? And the caesura, which is created by the question mark there, creates a pause which emphasises the fact that she's not actually there to answer the question. The earth's still as hard, the same empty gardens exist. So again, we've got this winter imagery reflecting coldness and loneliness. And gardens are usually characterised as something fertile and full of life, but here they represent loneliness and even death. I wake with another mouth feeding from me. This is an interesting phrase here. What he's talking about is actually another lover, but rather than saying I wake up next to someone else or kissing someone else, he chooses this phrase to give the sense that perhaps he's unwilling or feels that it's his duty. Maybe he feels that he needs to get back at his ex-wife or prove something, prove the fact that he can still be with someone new. There's also a synecdoche used here, mouth. A synecdoche is when a part of something is used to refer to the whole. So here the mouth is referring to the lover or the person who he's kissing. That makes it very depersonalised, so we get the idea that he doesn't care for this new lover. He just sees her as someone to kiss rather than as a person. He doesn't see her as someone who can replace his ex-wife. And he says, essentially, despite waking up next to this woman, he still feels as if love had not the right to walk out of me. So again, that reflects the sad tone of the poem. Love is personified, which places importance on that emotion, but also power. And it's love which walked out of him, so he almost blames love itself. And there's this sense of anger and bitterness, had not the right to walk out of me. The phrase walk out of me is quite interesting as well. We might expect to hear walk out on me. You talk about someone walking out on you if they left you. But here there's this sense that the emotion of love actually left his whole body, which gives again this sense that he's kind of blaming love as this powerful emotion and that he couldn't have done anything about it. Again, here we've got a caesura and a short clause and another caesura following that, which kind of isolates that short phrase, thou a year now. And that could convey anger or a sense of inevitability. Again, we've got further short clauses, so what you say. Here we've got this sense that she's not really responding, he's just imagining what she's saying, and that again increases the pathos and the bitterness of the poem. And he says he sends out spies to discover what she's doing, so he's obviously sending out friends to find out where she is now and what she's up to, so there's a sense of obsession there as well. He says they smile, so it's almost as if they too are against him. He feels very, very vulnerable in the situation, as if he can do nothing. They return, tell me your body's as firm, you are as alive, as warm and inviting as when they knew you first. There's almost a sense here that the spies might have feelings for her themselves because of the way they describe her using all of these references to her body. And while she is warm and inviting, the speaker is cold, living in winter, again showing the separation between the two people. The phrase when they knew you first suggests that she perhaps changed during the relationship or was happier before, and the ellipsis there reflects thoughts of what could have been if they hadn't been together at all. Then he says, perhaps it is the winter, its isolation from other seasons. Again, that repeated use of winter imagery shows his loneliness. That sends me your ghost to witness when I wake. So death is used as a metaphor throughout the poem. It's sort of tied with the ideas of winter, and it symbolises the end of their relationship and also the fact that her memory haunts him. And when he wakes up, his loneliness is worst. So when he wakes up without her, he feels the lack of her presence very, very strongly. Somebody came here today, asked how you were keeping. So again, we've got that repetition of you all the way through the poem, highlighting his sense of loss and how much he misses her. But he doesn't know the answer to these questions. He says, I imagine you waking in another city. He doesn't know where she is or what she's doing, so he has to guess. Touched by this same hour, so ordinary a thing as loss comes now and touches me. That repetition of the word touch emphasises his desire to be close to her. And he describes loss as a very ordinary thing, reflecting the fact that loss does affect everyone, but the speaker didn't imagine having to experience it himself. As we know all throughout the poem, it's been written in open form, there's been no rhyme at all, and it's significant that there is no rhyme at the very end either. Often poems end in a rhyming couplet or have some kind of resolution, but the fact that there is no final rhyme here means that his feelings are not resolved, and the entire poem ends on that very sad note that it began with.